Good evening, it's Pastor Bob here with Sunrise Community Church. I hope you guys are having a good week. I tell you, I've been thinking all week. Last Sunday we talked about the resurrection a little bit. We talked about how hard it was to believe. And Easter's coming up just 4 more weeks from now. It'll be Easter Sunday. By the way, did you know we turned the clocks ahead, not this Sunday, but next Sunday. The springtime is coming really quick, but Easter is coming in just 4 weeks. And you know, as I was thinking about that, I was thinking about last week, and we talked about the resurrection a little bit. I want to really dive into the resurrection. You know, one of the things that bothers me most, I think, when I started thinking about it, and I realized I'm guilty of it too, you know, we preach about the cross. We preach about Calvary, about Jesus dying for our sins, and then every Easter, we preach about the resurrection, the most powerful thing that ever happened in Christianity, the most powerful thing that ever happened. I mean, you know, let me just tell you something. The resurrection, it wasn't a magical trick, but it was an invasion. We're going to talk about that on Sunday. It was an invasion of God's presence into this world. It's what we call the already, but the not yet. Anyway, you know what I've noticed is we preach about the resurrection very little, and yet that is one of the basis. That is the basis of our whole faith. I mean, we preach on it on Easter, and then we dust it off, and then we put it back in the shelf with the rest of the books until next Easter. If you think back over your history, have you heard the resurrection preached about a lot? I know I haven't, just at certain times of the year. So over the next few weeks, I want to talk about that, especially when I look at the world today and the situation we're in. We're in the midst of one of the worst pandemics, or the worst pandemic we've seen in a century. And we're here. People are still, some of them in their homes, still afraid of being sick or even death. And in the midst of that, we've got the fear and the anger, the demonstrations, the protests, the civil protests over George Floyd, and all that that's going on. We've got all that. And then I reminded this, because I'm old enough to remember this, I look back at the civil rights movement. I remember Dr. Martin Luther King. I have many of his books in my bookshelf. He's one of my heroes, because as I look back at him and I remember the civil rights movement of the 60s, I remember something that seems to be missing today. And that was there was always a hope in everything he says. I remember when he gave that great speech, I Have a Dream. And in it he says that we're going to hewn out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. And that is a direct reference to Daniel chapter 2, verses 34 and 35, verses 45, where the king of Babylon has gotten this vision about the future. And, well, I'll just wait till Sunday to tell you all that. But also, you know, I take it into the New Testament. I take what Jesus says. Jesus talks about the kingdom of heaven being like a mustard seed. When it's the smallest of all seeds, yet it grows into a tree big enough for a bird to fly and perch on. And then I look at the Apostle Paul's writings when he talks about Jesus Christ was crucified in weakness, but he was raised again by the power of God. And he says that you also have that power of God directed in you. What does all that mean? What does it mean when Peter says in 1 Peter that we have a living hope because of the resurrection? What does it mean when Paul says in Philippians that we should be living in the power of the resurrection? What does all that mean? What does it mean for us today in the world that we live in that seems to have lost hope? What does the resurrection bring for us today that will change our lives? We'll talk about it on Sunday. God bless you.